My topic today is a little short and essentially it's talking about standards and in serious games and simulations industry. And like it to be participated, just talk about it with me. Feel free to discuss, interrupt me at any point of time. So what really do we mean by standards? Have you in your industries, in your past experience, experienced standards anywhere, in any walk of life, in any profession?
Yeah, ISO standards of manufacturing.
That's one, that's right. The CM standards, the ISO standards, standards in every walk of life.
Like in console gaming, the standard for like factory hardware that to conform to
Right.
ASME.
And why do you think standards are really important to maintain? Why are standards in place in the first place?
So that there's less fragmentation and make life easier for the developer.
And that customers expect that a certain level of quality that emerges out of those standards. There's a way to do things, a process to work things out. We don't have in this industry today a set of standards that can help us sort of unify serious games and simulations, and that's a very big challenge, I think, in terms of the growth potential of this industry. And serious games is focused specifically around education. Serious games, simulations, augmented reality, even things like alternate reality. For education, doesn't have standards as such. The closest equivalent I think we have in doing this is something that I talked about today in the morning, which is the SCORM standard or the IMS standards or AICC standards, which actually package content in a particular way, which package the interaction between the learner and the system in a particular way. But we don't have any really serious attempt at creating standards for simulation serious game. And I think for customers, as I said in the panel discussion in the morning as well, for customers, getting the value of what a simulation or a serious game can give to them is extremely important. I think it's a big priority for customers. They don't understand what, at the end of playing a serious game, what will my student achieve in a standardized way, right? And I think this industry is ripe for the creation of such standards. And standards typically are accompanied by a shared vocabulary. So you define things in a particular way, so that everybody understands those things in the same way. And also ways to measure and track analytics around that standard. So if you have a standard like a CMM, you have a way to figure out how projects are done on time, on schedule, and so on and so forth. The current efforts have been around things like AICC and SCORM. And ADL, which is Advanced Distributed Learning, has created something called HLA, High Level Architecture for Simulations, okay, in which they are looking at how even multiplayer synchronous and asynchronous applications can be run over a network, and it's possible to store information about what people do in a simulation. Okay, so if there are 5 surgeons working on a patient, what do each of the 5 surgeons do, and how do they perform, even if they're located anywhere in the world? And I said these standards are very important because they're looking at a common vocabulary of not only how simulation content or serious game content is structured, but also a way of measuring or mapping or tracking how learner interactions happen in a simulated environment. Again, the Let's See Foundation is trying to do a lot of great work around runtime web services, orchestration. These are things which enable systems to talk to each other in a unified manner. And the latest avatar of SCORM, which is extension of SCORM, which is called Project NCAN, is also looking at recording user activity in a very different way as compared to what was being done earlier. A lot of interest is happening also in learning analytics and knowledge, and particularly directly to the conferences of LAK 2011 and 2012. They've been doing extremely good work in terms of figuring out how in a socially enabled world can we track offline and online data and create information and actionable analytics out of it. The AS1000D is probably the most comprehensive content specification standard for defense. I don't know if anybody has heard of this particular standard, but this really applies to all kinds of military equipment. Could be a plane, it could be a gun, and how the military equipment can be broken down into various parts and components, and therefore training could be organized accordingly. So there are a few efforts. None of them have seen the light of any day in terms of any mass adoption of standards. That's one big concern that we have. Some people have also worked on building server-side platforms for simulations and serious games. I've seen C4 systems do it for collaborative training. Of course, CAE does a lot of work in this area, which means systems that actually manage training, and training not of the typical type, but game analytics or serious simulations analytics that they try and capture, and based on that they can go ahead and modify the simulation parameters to do various interesting things with that. Lardell with HealthStream has got interesting catalog system for simulations as well. Very interesting work that they are doing as well in the medical area. So with bionics based simulation, stuff like that. Perhaps a little more exciting is Mochi Media. Mochi Media is a company that, I don't know if you've heard of this company, it does APIs or software development kits for gamification. So for example, it does rewards engine or points engine that you can plug into your game, right? You can just consume their API and sort of gamify that aspect. And therefore, some players in the market are looking at how API can become available for this thing. And of course, with our platform Learn6, we're trying to do something exactly like that as well. Any questions? Any thoughts so far? Anybody heard of any standards in e-learning or simulations that you'd like to add here? No? Okay. Now in terms of why standards, again, coming back to why standards, what's required is very apparent. We have a challenge globally of employability. So people, A, becoming employable, B, when they're on the job, getting trained to do what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to go on to do in the future. As well as demographic trends. Today, India has the unenviable challenge of 500 million people in the workforce, that in the working population age 16 to 60. Now, if you're faced with the problem of training 500 million people, what do? There's no other way except to leverage technology in a large manner. And of course, you know about the mobile penetration in India. The device adoption trends worldwide are going towards smaller form factors and cheaper form factors. On the technology side, I think it's a very interesting piece. We saw a bit of semantic web there. So I don't completely agree with what AR & Co showed in terms of its application to education. But we see adaptive gaming, we see semantic web, we see location awareness and gesture computing. You saw the goggles in that session as well. How these can actually be adopted for learning and training is not very intuitive to look at. And therefore, but these technologies need to be put in context of whatever standards will emerge. With traditional e-learning, standards were fairly simple. You have a curriculum which is broken down into courses. Courses are broken down into chapters. Chapters are broken down into topics. And with topics, you can have questions. You can have various simple. So it's a very well-structured curricular approach to education that exists today. So it's fairly easy to do standards there. Okay, if there's a topic, here's how it will be introduced. Here's what it will be, how it will be assessed. Okay, here's how it will be sequenced. We know that fairly clearly because we've been working in that space for over 100 years. But with serious game simulations, there are many challenges. Okay, we have single versus multi-user. Okay, that's one big challenge. Synchronous versus asynchronous, self-paced versus blended, adaptive versus fixed. Simple cause and effect models, I teach this concept, I take a test, versus more and more complex algorithms. If 100 people did this and you also did this, then so happens. So those algorithms and all are getting very complex. Plus the added complication of having social or network systems of learning, right? You saw a lot of hardware augmentation. Okay, that adds another layer of complexity in this, as well as does different form factors and location awareness. Also, very clearly, what type of e-learning or digital learning that you employ is also very important and relevant. I see a lot of confusion between what is a serious game and what is a simulation. In fact, all through this conference, I've heard serious games and simulations being taken in the same way, or used interchangeably. There are very significant differences between serious games and simulations. Serious games are not meant to be located in a real world. Okay, they are meant to be an artificial world that's created, may not have anything else with competition and challenge and reward systems. Whereas simulations are more real-life immersive environments to work in. I heard about augmented reality and mobile gaming, but I haven't heard of alternate reality games, which is another genre of games altogether. Like World Without Oil is a very interesting example where you actually went in and you were given physical cues in the system to start playing around in the real world. So your game experience was really augmented by the real world experience, but not many people are working on that in that area. Also a plethora of design strategies, and Christian will tell you that as well. So many different ways and frameworks of simulation in serious games that it's impossible to say that design could be standardized in any possible time. But that's a big tension in the system that you cannot. How do you standardize something that's so creative? And I'll talk about it in the next slide as well. Evidence-centered design is one of the great theories for design of such environments, which talks about tasks, competency, and metrics, 3 things, and how games can be designed for that. A lot of work people are doing in the area of stealth assessment through digital games as well, where the users of the game don't understand that they're being assessed, but the system is really capturing a lot of valuable information about what the learner is doing. And epistemic games is again a framework by Don Schaffer, who is looking at how games can be thought of in the first place. Is there a meta framework for games? And therefore also things like competency versus action outcome based. You shoot somebody, he dies is an action based thing. And then competency is how do you shoot the guy. And as I said, in absence of standards, there are many different challenges and complexities that come in. You can't reuse, you can't interoperate. Okay, reuse meaning if I have one simulation that I have a bank teller who is actually going to go in and do service a customer who wants to open a new account, I can't use that simulation in a different context by just changing around some variables, right? Okay, I could make the same process happen for a healthcare situation or reservation desk. That's one. Or I could put it as part of another curriculum. Okay, it could be one curriculum which is a starting curriculum for bank employees, more advanced curriculum. How do I reuse these elements seamlessly into different curricula? How do I interoperate between different devices, platforms? Make sure that irrespective of which platform you are on, you're still able to access serious game simulation. It shouldn't make a difference where you are. And then accessibility and durability, which means that you withstand technological change. Very important pieces of what standardization would mean. Also, traditional learning management systems have no capability when it comes to simulations in serious games, which is a big hole in the entire system. What a learning management system does is track scores and performance, but that's all that it does. Okay, predominantly. From a serious games perspective, you need to capture very strong, step-by-step, action-oriented data about what the user is doing in the game environment, right? And none of this is captured by traditional learning management systems as such. Because that's how the analytics happen really. It's not just what you achieved at the end of the thing, how you achieved that is equally important. And as I said, the tension between creativity and standardization is a huge one. A lot of game designers will come and say, it's a very creative process, how are you going to standardize something like this? Okay? And that's something that you have to live with. It's a complexity that exists in both e-learning traditionally and serious games. Now what happens as an implication is that these act as barriers to openness, to change, to adoption at a wide level. So if you had somebody saying, I've got an ISO or a CMM certified company, then they understand there is a certain level of quality. Okay, so there's less a barrier to adoption of a service or a product from that kind of a company. Time to market is a very important piece. How quickly can you create a game and take it to market and deploy it over a variety of platforms seamlessly? Big issue. Okay, cost is a big issue. Perhaps bigger issue is sharing of best practices. Okay, how do we actually create industry momentum so that best practices are preserved over time? So what will standards imply? It will imply definitely an open community effort, which I'm hoping that this forum will be interested in taking up. Requires shared vocabulary, shared ontology, looking at various pedagogical aspects, andragogical aspects, looking at technology, looking at behavior, data interfaces, looking at analytics, metrics, and creating sort of a totally new way of looking across the genres of serious games, simulations, virtual worlds, augmented reality, alternate reality, mobile gaming, some kind of a framework that enables us to understand at the base there is a gameplay behavior or a simulated environment behavior, real-life behavior. And of course, guidance and certification assessment. I think that's basically what I had to say. Now I'll listen to you. I'll shut up.